All right, hey y'all. My name is Joshua Mancy, and today I'll be presenting my dashboard on the safest states to live in the United States. So my data set that I chose was basically an Excel sheet that had all the states listed out, and then crime rates, different types of crime rates in the years 2015 and 2016, and then it did another row that identified the increase or decrease in crime from 15 to 16. So it was an interesting data set, how it was, but how it was might not be all that interesting to some viewers and was also very hard to put into Tableau. And so I condensed my data set down quite a bit and just made it all 50 states with crime by state in 2016. And that was it. And so this Tableau dashboard is going to walk you through some of the conclusions I found in that data set. So let's get going. All the data in my data set, the crime rates is crime per 100,000 people in that state. I kind of wrote that up top here so you can see that it's not just like a total number of crimes. So the first aspect of my dashboard is perhaps the easiest to use is my interactive map. My interactive map is a map of the 48 mainland states. Alaska and Hawaii didn't quite make the cut. But this map allows the user to come use my crime parameter and click through any different type of crime that they want to see on the states. And then, so if you're wanting to check out property crime, you can come over here and check out Missouri. And there was almost 2,800 instances of property crime per 100,000 people in the state. So that's kind of interesting. Missouri seems to be kind of high in a lot of these crimes, to be honest. Another thing to note on this map is that if instead of clicking on murder and seeing that in Texas there was 5 murders per 100,000 people, you want to click on murder and see which states have more murder than others. Just by looking at the graph, you can come up here and identify my color bar here, where the lighter blue is going to be states with fewer crime and darker blue is going to be states with more crime. So if you kind of look at it right now, most of the states are fairly light blue, but even Missouri is one of the darkest ones. I think it's the second most. Louisiana with 12 per 100,000, and Missouri with 9 murder, non-negligent manslaughter crimes. So that's one way that you can use this graph to compare states. So this graph is pretty interactive and easy to use for comparative reasons, as well as just state by state. You want to see how much crime occurs. So that was very interesting. One of the more fun things I did with this dashboard, for sure. One of the things I enjoyed the most. I like making the maps. Another thing I did was I ran a principal components analysis of the data in R, and here's a screenshot of that graph here. So basically, my principal components analysis was looking at how the variables correlate with each other. That's one way to look at this graph. And so a couple of the conclusions I drew was that rape is inversely related to population, and I'll talk about that in my graph down here a little bit more, but that was one of the more interesting conclusions I drew from this data. And then the other big thing looking at this graph is simply checking out all these crime variables. You have your property crime, your larceny, your murder, non-negligent manslaughter, robbery. You have all these crimes that are shooting out mostly towards the right. And so if you one way to interpret that is that these states that are more towards the right have more crime, and the states that are more towards the left overall have less crime. And so you have your Vermont, your Maine, your New Hampshire, your South Dakota, Montana, that's all fairly low in crime for the most part. And then you come over here to the right and you have your Louisiana, Nevada, Arkansas, New Mexico, Texas, some of those states that are going to have a little more crime. So that's one easy way to check out that graph. And you kind of just see how the variables correlate with each other. There's some interesting conclusions that can be drawn from that. So let me scroll down here and talk about the most interesting conclusion that I found in that data, which is over here, my rape versus population graph. I kind of noticed when I was doing this that it seemed like rape had an inversely correlated relationship with population. And so I wanted to graph that and see if it was right. And it was. As population increases, rape decreases, or if you say it the other way, as population decreases, the rape rates overall increase. And that's a very interesting conclusion to draw. I guess if you think about it logically, I mean, that's a horrid crime, and you can it kind of does make sense that sometimes that occurs in more rural areas. And it's obviously a very sad thing, but it leads to a very interesting correlation here. I put in this regression line. You can kind of tell that the data is in a negative manner here, but you can really see it with the linear regression line that cuts through the data. You can really see that relationship. And so then the last really interesting thing from my data set, besides just being able to compare crime by state, was the fact that when I opened the data set, there was two different definitions of rape. And one of them you can see here was the revised definition. One of them is the legacy definition. So I kind of looked up what those meant, and basically they were just classifying certain instances as rape and certain ones as just different types of assault. And so I wanted to kind of see if one definition had a better impact on the data than the other one, if they really made that much of a difference. And so per Dr. Lingwall's advice, I put a little graph here comparing each of them just with the other and see if there was any sort of correlation. And there certainly was. This is almost, you can tell by this graph, it's almost perfectly in line. It's almost perfectly correlated with each other, almost in a perfect linear fashion. And so basically what this graph shows is that both definitions it's basically the same. There's really no difference, because I was on the fence about whether I wanted to delete one of the columns of data and then just roll with one. But it wouldn't have mattered either way, because they have the same proportional impact on crime rate by state. So that was another interesting conclusion I drew. But anyway, that's my dashboard, safest states to live. This could be a useful graph or useful dashboard for families that are looking for somewhere to move. Obviously, finding a safe home is an important thing for families, and information like this could certainly help with that. And I hope some of these interactive features help in that regard, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.